Hi Danny, it's good to see you again.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for coming in and being here today.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. So last week we met and it was our initial session and we sort of, got to know each other. I talked to you a little bit about what we would do in therapy and you told me about you. And we also talked about cognitive behavior therapy. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So I was hoping to maybe use some of those strategies in this session. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. And if you ever have any questions or if you ever want to stop me, please feel free. But just before we begin, I'd like to check in and see, where your mood's at right now so I can get a better idea of what you're dealing with. If you had to describe, how you're feeling today, what would you call it? How would you say you feel?
I feel like heavy.
Heavy, okay.
Yeah.
So I'd like to, find out a little bit more about what that means for you. So what does heavy feel like for you?
I feel like it's anxiety and I feel depressed at the same time. And it's just one great ball of emotions with those two things affecting each other.
Okay, so it sounds like you're dealing with, some difficult emotions possibly. Just to sort of break that down a little bit further, if you were to maybe rate your anxiety right now on a scale, let's say 1 to 10, with 1 being very, very little to no anxiety and 10 being the most anxious you've ever felt, where would you say you fall?
7.
A 7? Okay.
Yes.
And then for your depression, same thing. If you wanted to describe, your depression on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being the, little to no depression and 10 being the most depressed you felt, where would you put that?
Like a 4.
Okay, so anxiety is a 7, depression is a 4.
Mm-hmm.
So is it safe to say that, you're dealing with both pretty heavy emotions, but anxiety is maybe higher?
Definitely. Yep.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that with me. And I am sorry that you're feeling that way, but hopefully at the end of this session, maybe we can take something home to help you, with these emotions too. So the way that I'd like to set this up, I just want to go over our, agenda for this session, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So I asked you how you're feeling. I got to check in with you. Next, I'd like to just sort of review what happened in our last week, since it's been, a week since I've seen you. After that, anything that you want to discuss, any problems that you want to work on, we can work on that and maybe learn some skills for dealing with these emotions. And then we can, summarize what we've gone over in this session, talk about any homework that we're going to have for the next week, and any questions, and move forward. Does that sound like the plan?
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, awesome. So, if you don't mind, you want to tell me about, this past week since I've seen you, anything that's happened to you, anything that you think would be important to bring up?
Yeah, I definitely would say that. I went to the grocery store around Monday.
Okay.
And I was doing my thing, and I seen somebody just looked just like my ex, and that just put me in a depression mode, I would say, and that was definitely.
So are we referring to this ex-girlfriend that we just recently broke up with, the one that you discussed in our last session?
Yes.
Okay, so that must have been difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And you said that had you feeling depressed when you saw her.
Yeah.
What were you thinking in your head when you saw her? Or this woman that looked like her, I'm sorry.
That I wanted to grab her and tell her I'm sorry and that I miss her.
Yeah. Which is a very, I think, valid thing to feel when you have a relationship that ends. Of course you're gonna miss them, and it's difficult to see things that remind you of that person.
Yeah, definitely.
Did anything else happen during the week that was important?
About 2 days after that, me and my father got in a fight, and most ridiculous thing ever, and because I didn't do dishes, like I just put one dish, it was ridiculous, and then the same day I had a job interview.
Okay.
And that really, with that fight alone, dragged on the whole day with that interview, and it really just wasn't going well for me.
So when you had the job interview, what happened in the job interview?
I was just still had that argument with my
Right.
father in my head, and I just felt like I was messing up, just felt like I was messing the whole interview up without even knowing what I was messing up with.
How were you feeling in the interview?
Anxious the whole time, like anxious
Okay.
all the time, the whole exact time.
Yeah, absolutely. So you started off the week with this, feelings of seeing this person that reminded you of your ex-girlfriend, and then you got into an argument with your father, and then right after that you had a job interview, which
Same
is
day.
really, everything that we touched on last week as well, that you're going through, your recent breakup, your current living situation, and of course looking for a job since COVID. So what do you think, now that we've I'm sorry, was there anything else that happened in the week that you would like to bring up?
Oh god, that was the tip of the iceberg.
Okay, yeah.
The job interview, I didn't get it. By the way, I did not get it.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
Okay, there will definitely be other job interviews, and
Thank you.
hopefully we can maybe work on some ways for you to help calm yourself down too. So, out of those three things, what do you think was the thing that you would really like to focus on in this session?
I feel like the anxiety.
The
I would like
anxiety.
to work on that the most.
Okay. Do you think the anxiety was more so in this job interview situation than it was with the fight and with, seeing this person?
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely.
Okay, so we can go through that then, definitely. So now that we've kind of figured out where we would like to go, would you like to spend the rest of this session working on that, working on the anxiety, and maybe helping work through anxiety for future job interviews?
Yes.
Okay. So why don't you tell me a little bit about what this interview was and what happened?
It was a roofing company, actually, that it's pretty much almost the same job I had before. Pretty close. It was I'd be the boss, pretty much.
Like a foreman?
Yeah, like a foreman.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd be the foreman. And same, almost a little bit more, a little bit less pay cut, but still not as much as the job I have now, So,
I see.
and I was really needed it. I really want that job so much that I can get back on my feet.
So this was like a good opportunity
And
for
I needed it so bad. I feel like that's what really.
What were some of your feelings maybe before the fight going into this job? How did you feel like about the interview?
Before the interview?
Right, before the interview and maybe even before you got into the argument with your dad.
I knew about the interview around Monday, and they called me, and so the whole time I was definitely anxious the whole time, nervous about it.
Yeah.
And it's very crucial if I got that job. So.
What were you thinking in your head, about this?
Being very nervous, and if I don't get it, then I'll mess up.
So if you don't get the job, what were you thinking would happen if you didn't get the job?
Then I'll not be able to live at my dad's house,
Okay.
and I will not be able to get with the relationship again.
Okay, so basically you were thinking, if I don't get this job, I won't be able to reach my goal of eventually moving out, and that I'm not going to be able to work on getting better with relationships.
Yep.
Okay.
Or maybe get back with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'd like to possibly utilize some techniques for your anxiety. So we talked about, your feelings of anxiety during the job and sort of the deeper issues there. There's a core belief under that too, I'm sure, when you feel like you really need something, and at the end of that, what do you think was really deep down the core belief for you there,
I would say, what do you mean by that though?
So